Tubi or Tuppy. How do you make a villain sympathetic but still a monster? From what I understand, it's to make their motivation understandable, but their actions are still bonkers and evil. Yeah, so I go over this, I think, a bit in my video on Thanos. I have a Thanos and Gamora dialogue dive, and I think I talked about this extensively with the video I did on Justice League. I think the video is literally called, or I think it's like the Snyder Cut saved Steppenwolf by doing the bare minimum. And Steppenwolf will without second thought annihilate hundreds of people, but I think he's understandable because again, he just wants to go home, right? So the idea behind making an understandable villain, because understandable and relatable are completely different things. A relatable villain is someone that you could be empathetic with, right? And you could put yourself in their shoes and understand why they're doing what they're doing because of the situation that they're in. And you're just like, oh yeah, if I was in their shoes and I had their background, then I could understand me doing that. You know, there's tons of I think some of the best villains are relatable villains. They're the ones with the most nuance and gray. Killmonger is kind of like a modern day example of I think a lot of rage within the African American community, where a lot of people be like, yeah, you know, his dad was murdered and he was left alone, and you know, he has a bunch of racial rage, which really wasn't, because again, he just cared about destruction and killing people. And then there's the other side, which is the sympathetic villain, where they're understandable, right? So it's oh yeah, I would never be in a position to do what they're doing, and what they're doing is obviously wrong, but I get why they're doing it in universe. It's consistent. You make a villain where their motivations are understandable insofar as it's internally consistent, and an audience or reader can be oh yeah, hey, I get why in their mind they're doing this, even though it's wrong. There's a logic to why it's happening. Now that doesn't make them likable. Being likable, relatable, understandable are all different. Steppenwolf originally was not, I think, understandable, because he said war was basically all he lived for. He just lived to conquer. But it's why? Nobody just lives to conquer. That's not an end goal for anybody. But in the Snyder Cut, he literally just wanted to go home, and that was his goal, which is understandable. That I can get behind that. So that's the difference.